You think you're in control of your life. But what if I told you most of your reactions are being predicted, sometimes even engineered, by people around you? Not openly, not aggressively, but subtly, psychologically. Every time you get angry in an argument, every time you rush to defend yourself, every time you feel the urge to explain your actions, you are revealing something valuable, something exploitable. Because in human interaction, information isn't just what you say, it's how you react. And there are people, quiet, observant, highly strategic, who don't care about your words. They care about your patterns, your emotional triggers, your need to be understood, your discomfort with silence. And once they map those patterns, they don't need to fight you. They can control you. This is the uncomfortable truth most people never face. You are not being judged by your intentions. You are being measured by your reactions. And reactions are predictable. Predictability is control. That's why the most dangerous minds operate differently. They don't rush to respond. They don't feel the need to explain. They don't chase validation. They follow one principle. Never react. Never explain. Just ignore. It sounds simple, but in practice, it's one of the most difficult psychological disciplines to master, because it goes against your instincts. Your brain wants closure, wants clarity, wants to be understood. But the moment you give in to that urge, you hand over leverage. Now here's the part most people miss. This isn't about being cold. It's about being in control. So if you want to understand how influence really works, if you want to stop being subtly manipulated in conversations, relationships, and power dynamics, then you need to start seeing what others don't. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. So arm yourself with knowledge. Like the video, subscribe, because what you're about to learn next will change how you interpret every interaction you've ever had.
Because manipulation doesn't announce itself. It doesn't walk into your life wearing a label. It adapts. It blends in. It studies the environment and then becomes part of it. That's why you don't notice it. Not because it's hidden, but because it feels familiar. It sounds like concern, looks like advice, feels like normal interaction. And that's where it becomes dangerous. Because once something feels normal, you stop questioning it. You stop analyzing it. You accept it. And acceptance is the doorway to influence. Let's break this down further. There are 3 silent entry points manipulation uses. Emotional alignment. Someone agrees with you, validates you, makes you feel understood. Not because they care deeply, but because alignment lowers your guard. When people feel seen, they become open. And open people are easier to guide. Subtle redirection. The conversation shifts slightly. Not enough for you to notice, but just enough to steer your thinking. A suggestion here. A question there, and before you realize it, you're no longer thinking independently. You're following a path that was quietly laid out for you. Delayed influence. This is the most dangerous, because nothing happens immediately. No pressure, no urgency, just ideas planted, left to grow over time. And when they finally take effect, you think the decision was yours. That's how deep manipulation works. It doesn't control your actions. It shapes your perception. And perception controls everything. Because you don't act based on reality. You act based on what you believe is real. Now here's the part most people never realize. The moment you start reacting emotionally, you confirm the frame someone else has created. The moment you start explaining yourself, you step into a position where you're seeking approval. And the moment you start trying to be understood, you give the other person control over how you're perceived. That's a shift. Subtle, invisible, but powerful. And once that shift happens, you're no longer leading the interaction. You're responding to it. And the one who controls the frame controls the outcome. So if you truly want to break free from manipulation, you have to stop focusing on what is being said and start focusing on what is being done beneath the surface. The tone, the timing, the intention. Because manipulation is never in the words. It's in the structure, the delivery, the positioning, And once you begin to see that, you start to notice patterns, repeated behaviors, predictable strategies, and suddenly, what once felt natural starts to feel calculated. That's awareness. And awareness is the first disruption. But it's not enough, because seeing the pattern doesn't mean you can control it yet. That's where the next layer comes in. The first real rule, the one most people ignore, because it requires something uncomfortable. Restraint, control, discipline. And once you understand it, you'll realize something powerful. The strongest position in any interaction is not the one who speaks first, or the one who speaks the most. It's the one who cannot be emotionally moved. That's where control begins. Let's break a dangerous illusion. Most people believe manipulation looks like control, like dominance, like pressure, like obvious deception. But real manipulation feels natural, even logical. It disguises itself as normal conversation. That's why it works. Because you don't resist what you don't recognize. In a moment, I'm going to reveal the most powerful tactic in this entire framework, the one I call the golden payload. But if you jump to it without understanding the earlier layers, you'll misuse it. And misuse creates exposure. Because these tactics operate like a system. Each one builds on the next. Miss one step, and the entire structure collapses. Now let's talk about the cost of ignorance. If you leave this video right now, nothing obvious will happen. No sudden failure. No dramatic consequence. But slowly, you'll keep over-explaining yourself to people who already made up their minds. You'll keep reacting emotionally in situations designed to provoke you. You'll keep giving away control, piece by piece, without realizing it. And the worst part, you'll think you're being authentic, when in reality, you're being predictable. And predictable people are the easiest to control. So before we get to the final strategy, you need to understand the foundation. The first real rule, the one that separates controlled individuals from those who control the dynamic. Rule 1. Emotional non-reactivity. Power doesn't start with action. It starts with control. Not control over others, but control over yourself. Specifically, control over your emotional output. Because emotions are not just internal experiences. They are external signals. Every expression, every reaction, every shift in tone, broadcasts information. Information about your state of mind, your confidence, your insecurities, your limits. And in any interaction, information is leverage. So when you react emotionally, you're not just responding, you're revealing. You're giving the other person access to your internal world. Now here's where it becomes strategic. When someone provokes you, they're not just expressing themselves. They're observing you, testing you, measuring your thresholds. They want to see what triggers you, what unsettles you, what makes you lose composure. Because once they know that, they don't have to guess anymore. They can predict you. And once someone can predict you, they can influence you. This is what we call behavioral exposure leakage. And most people leak constantly, without realizing it. Let's slow it down. If someone insults you, and you react instantly, you've just revealed your trigger point. Now, they know exactly where to apply pressure. If someone questions your decision, and you begin to explain yourself in detail, you've revealed uncertainty, even if you were originally confident, because over-explanation signals internal doubt. If someone withdraws attention, and you chase it, call them, text them, try to fix it, you've revealed dependency. Now they understand your need for validation. And once these three things are clear, your triggers, your uncertainty, your needs, you become readable. And readable people are controllable. That's how subtle control begins. Not through force, but through observation. Now here's where the shift happens. The moment you stop reacting automatically, you interrupt the pattern. You create space, what psychologists refer to as a response gap. And this gap is where power lives. Because it breaks expectation. They expected anger. They got silence. They expected defense. They got composure. They expected urgency. They got stillness. Now something changes. Not in you, but in them. Because humans rely on feedback to navigate interactions. And when that feedback disappears, uncertainty enters. And uncertainty is uncomfortable. So what do? They start adjusting. They rethink what they said. They question their position. They even begin to lose confidence. All because you didn't react. That's the paradox. You didn't gain control by doing more. You gained it by doing less. Because control in human interaction doesn't belong to the loudest person. It belongs to the most composed. Let's make it practical. Imagine this. You're in a public setting, a meeting, a group discussion. Someone challenges you directly, maybe even aggressively. Now you have three options. Option 1. React emotionally. You raise your voice, defend your position, match their energy. What happens? You escalate the tension. You turn the moment into conflict, and in doing so, you validate their challenge. Option 2. Over-explain. You start justifying your decision, breaking it down, trying to make everyone understand. What happens? You shift from authority to approval-seeking, and people can feel that shift. Option 3. You remain calm, measured, unbothered. You respond briefly, or not at all. You hold your position without emotional movement. Now watch what happens. The room changes. Attention shifts. People stop focusing on the words and start focusing on you. Your composure becomes a message, and that message is powerful because it communicates something without saying it. I'm not threatened. I'm not shaken. I don't need to prove anything. And that is influence. Not loud, not aggressive, but undeniable. Now here's the mistake most people make. They think non-reactivity means suppression, that you're bottling things up, ignoring emotions, pretending not to feel. That's not power. That's avoidance. Real non-reactivity is different. It's awareness. Without expression, you feel the emotion. You recognize it, but you don't let it control your output. You don't let it dictate your behavior. You don't broadcast it unnecessarily. That's discipline. And discipline creates distance. Distance between stimulus and response. And in that distance, you regain choice. That's the key word. Choice. Because once you can choose your response, you are no longer predictable. And unpredictability disrupts control. So understand this clearly. Non-reactivity is not about being passive. It's about being selective. You choose what deserves your energy, what deserves your attention, what deserves your response, and more importantly, what doesn't. Because not every comment requires a reply. Not every challenge requires a defense. Not every situation deserves your emotional investment. And the moment you internalize that, everything changes. Your interactions become sharper. Your presence becomes stronger. Your influence becomes quieter, but more effective. And people will notice. Not because you said more, but because you stopped saying too much. That's power. Controlled. Intentional. And most importantly, unshakable. Let's make this personal. Not theoretical. Not abstract. Real. Think about the last time someone misunderstood you. Not slightly. Not a small miscommunication. But completely. They got your intentions wrong. They judged your actions unfairly. They said something that didn't sit right with you. Something that felt off. And in that moment, you felt the urge to respond. To fix it. To correct the narrative. To make them see the truth. So what did you do? Did you try to explain yourself? Did you go back and forth, clarifying your intentions, breaking things down, trying to make it make sense? Be honest. Because most people do. It feels natural. It feels necessary. It even feels right. But now here's the real question. Did it actually work? Did they suddenly understand you? Did their perception shift? Or did it turn into a cycle? A loop, where the more you explained, the more they resisted, the more you clarified, the more they questioned, and the more you tried to fix it, the more complicated it became. That's not a coincidence. That's a pattern. And if you've experienced it before, you already know how it ends. Frustration, exhaustion, and no real resolution. Because this is where most people lose control. They assume that being understood is the goal. But in many interactions, understanding is not the objective. Control is. And once you miss that, you start playing the wrong game. You start investing energy into explaining, while the other person is focused on positioning. Let me show you how this plays out in real life. There was a manager. Smart, capable, respected. The kind of person who knew his job, made solid decisions, delivered results. On paper, he had everything going for him. But he had one pattern. Every time his authority was challenged, he explained himself. In detail, he would walk people through his reasoning, break down the logic, clarify the intention behind every decision. He believed something simple. If they understand me, they'll trust me. And at first, it seemed reasonable. It even looked like strong leadership. Transparent, communicative, open. But slowly, something started to shift. Not dramatically, not all at once. Subtly, people began questioning him more, interrupting him mid-sentence, challenging decisions they used to accept, testing boundaries that were once clear, and he couldn't understand why. From his perspective, he was doing everything right. He was communicating, explaining, being clear. So why was the resistance increasing? Why was respect decreasing? Here's what he didn't see. Every time he explained, he extended the conversation, and every extended conversation created more room for doubt, more angles to challenge, more opportunities for others to insert their opinions. His explanations, instead of closing the discussion, were opening it wider every single time, and something else was happening beneath the surface. Less visible, but more important. Perception was shifting. He no longer looked decisive. He looked negotiable. He no longer appeared certain. He appeared like he needed agreement. And in group dynamics, that subtle shift is everything. Because the moment people sense that your decisions are open for negotiation, they start negotiating. Constantly. That's when the dynamic changes. You're no longer leading. You're managing reactions. And that's a losing position. Now here's the turning point. At some point, he noticed a pattern. Not immediately, but after enough repeated situations, enough frustration, enough moments where things didn't go the way they should have, he realized something uncomfortable. It wasn't about his decisions. It was about his delivery. So he made one change. Just one. He reduced his explanations. Not completely, but strategically. He stopped over-justifying, stopped breaking everything down, stopped trying to convince everyone. Instead, he spoke less. He decided more. He gave direction, without excessive reasoning. At first, it felt unnatural, almost uncomfortable, because it went against his instinct to explain. But then something interesting happened. The resistance dropped. Fewer interruptions, fewer challenges, fewer unnecessary questions. And gradually, respect increased. Not because he became more intelligent, not because his decisions improved, but because his positioning changed. He no longer looked like someone seeking understanding. He looked like someone in control. Same person, same environment, same responsibilities, different strategy, and completely different outcome. That's the shift most people miss. It's not always about what you say. It's about how much you feel the need to say it. Because the more you try to control how people perceive you through explanation, the more control you give them over that perception. And the less you try, the more stable your position becomes. That's the paradox. And once you understand it, you start to move differently, speak differently, respond differently, not with more effort, but with more control. And that's where influence actually begins. Now understand this. What you've learned today is only one layer, a critical layer, but still just a surface. Because manipulation doesn't stop at reactions. It evolves. It adapts. It moves into deeper territory, into perception, into reputation, into how people think about you, even when you're not in the room. And this is where the game changes completely. Because at this level, it's no longer about what happens in a conversation. It's about what exists before the conversation even begins. Think about it. Before you speak, before you respond, before you even enter a space, people already have an idea of who you are, a mental image, a narrative, a position, and that narrative controls how everything you do is interpreted. The same words can be seen as confident or arrogant. The same silence can be seen as powerful or weak. The same decision can be seen as leadership or insecurity. And the difference is not in the action. It's in the perception. That's the level most people ignore. They focus on reacting better, speaking better, controlling emotions. But they forget something more important. If the perception is already set against you, everything you do gets filtered through it, twisted, reinterpreted, minimized. And that's how control bypasses you completely. Not by forcing you into reactions, but by shaping how others see you, before you even act. This is where reputation becomes a weapon. Not just something you have, but something that is used. Because once people assign you a role, they expect you to behave within it. And if you don't, they resist it, challenge it, reject it. That's why some people are constantly questioned, while others are rarely challenged. It's not always about competence. It's about positioning, about the psychological frame people place you in. And once that frame is established, it influences everything. Who listens to you? Who respects you? Who ignores you? All decided before you even speak. That's power. Not loud, not visible, but deeply embedded. And if you don't understand that level, everything you've learned today can still be bypassed. You can control your reactions, but still be dismissed. You can avoid over-explaining, but still be misunderstood. Because the real battlefield is not just behavior, it's belief. And belief is where real power lives. That's what the next layer exposes. The hidden psychological triggers that shape perception. The silent mechanisms that determine who gets taken seriously and who gets overlooked, who leads and who follows. And most importantly, why. You've taken the first step. You're more aware than before. But awareness alone is not protection. Not yet. Because the moment you think you understand the game is the moment you stop looking deeper. And that's exactly where vulnerability returns. So don't stop here. Go to the next video. Because what you don't see yet is still influencing you.